Well, I guess we should get to the poetry of the evening, although this feels like poetry to me. David Kirby will introduce Sharon Olds this evening. Sharon will read, and then afterwards we'll take a short 5-minute break, and then David will return to the podium to introduce Galway Kinnell. David is the Robert O. Lawson Distinguished Professor of English at Florida State University. He is the author or co-author of more than 20 books, most recently a collection of poetry, The Ha-Ha, Louisiana State University Press in 2003, and a volume of essays, What is a Book? Georgia University Press, 2002. His work appears frequently in the Best American Poetry and Pushcart Prize anthologies, and he was recently awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship. I am so honored that David Kirby is with us this evening, and I welcome him with open arms. Thank you, David.
Thank you, everybody. When Miles asked me to introduce Sharon Olds, I said, oh, goody. And then I said, well, I wonder where I can get some information on Sharon Olds. And then I said, oh, I know, I'll just ask my students. And here's why. Every living teacher of poetry knows that Sharon Olds is one of the most influential poets writing today. But I take the process a little bit further. Each term I ask my students to write what I call a soul sibling report. It's a 1,000-word paper in which they name and then discuss the 3 poets that they consider relatives, not necessarily influences, but poets they feel related to and feel comfortable with and who belong to the same poetic family that they do. Over the last 10 years, as you can imagine, just about every name you can think of has come up, including some that were absolutely new to me. Probably Dante would be the oldest. And then you work your way up the timeline. There's a big bulge around the Romantic era. Keats, Byron, Blake are there a lot. That's when a lot of people sort of start developing their relatives. Then we come up through Christina Rossetti, Edgar Allan Poe, the early moderns. We come up through Whitman and Dickinson. We come up, through Eliot, Frost, James Dickey, just about everybody under the sun. But before I drove up here this weekend, I scrolled back through my tabulations, and over the last decade, 3 names stand out. Elizabeth Bishop, Pablo Neruda, and Sharon Olds. Good. Okay. Very good. Very good. You get an A, Laure-Anne. And I'm not listing those in 1, 2, 3 order. These are the group that tie for first. So Sharon, I hope you're comfortable with the company that you're in there. Sharon was born in San Francisco, studied at Stanford University, received a master's from Columbia. She was named New York State Poet in 1998. She teaches poetry workshops at NYU's graduate creative writing program, along with a workshop at Goldwater Hospital on Roosevelt Island in New York. Her numerous honors include a National Endowment for the Arts grant, a Guggenheim Foundation Fellowship, the San Francisco Poetry Center Award for her first collection, Satan Says, and the Lamont Poetry Selection and National Book Critics Circle Award for the Dead and the Living. Her other books of poetry include Strike Sparks, Selected Poems, which was published by Knopf in 2004, which, along with these other volumes, is going to be on sale in the Ocean Breeze Room after the reading. Miss Olds' poetry is celebrated for its unflinching look at sexuality and relationships and how they relate to identity. So it's no wonder that she is so popular and her poetry is so sought after by young women poets, especially, since they are figuring out these matters for themselves. They're also figuring out how to write poetry, so who to go better to than Sharon Olds. But you only have to flip through a table of contents of one of her books to see that she writes about every aspect of human experience. As I put these notes together, I pulled from the shelf a favorite Sharon Olds collection, The Wellspring, and I saw titles that address every stage of life from womb to tomb. My Parents' Wedding Night, 1937. Killing My Sister's Fish. Celibacy at 20. After Making Love in Winter. First Birth. 40, Alone, No Gerbil. And I love this poem especially because it contains the names of the gerbils that we've all loved and murdered. Crackers, Fluffy, Pretzel, Biscuit, and Charlie. And then there's My Son, the Man, and after that, his father's cadaver. One poem, West, contains some lines I'd like to share with you. In the poem, the reader is standing on her porch and combing her hair, as all of us have done. And as she combs, she pauses to clean the comb and let the discarded hair drift away. But look what this poet does with this simple action. Now the hair rises on an updraft, wobbling, reddish. In a half circle, it wavers higher. The jelly head of the follicle has the tail of the hair in its mouth. It rolls back up toward me through the morning as if someone, somewhere, were saying to me, we are one now. Ladies and gentlemen, Sharon Olds.
Thank you so much. I have such a good home feeling about being here. I think it comes from having met Miles and Mimi in Key West. So with similar weather, and then to be here at the beginning last year, and to be in this poetry town, poetry city, poetry place, poetry shore. We've all been trying to express our love and gratitude for Miles, and I thought I might be in a unique position to be able to read one of Miles' most passionate love poems to Mimi from an early workshop, were it not for the confidential nature of these workshops. Oh, alas. So thanks for having me here. Thanks for having us all here. And I'm going to start with a poem that I've started every reading with since September 12th, 2001, when I looked for a poem to read that had been first written in Arabic. And I found a poem by Rabia al-Adawiya, a woman poet who lived in the desert around 750 CE. And it's translated by Willis Barnstone. If I worship you from fear of hell, burn me in hell. If I worship you from hope of paradise, exclude me from that place. But if I worship you for your own sake, do not withhold from me your eternal beauty. So I've been traveling around with, I was afraid that what has happened might happen. And so I wanted to start reading. I wish I could, I'll learn it in Arabic. That's what I should do. I hadn't thought of that. I'll do that. And I resisted the temptation of saying, if I worship you from hope of paradise. I resisted it. Laure-Anne, you are so irresistible. I don't know how I resisted it. Diagnosis. By the time I was 6 months old, she knew something was wrong with me. I got looks on my face she had not seen on any child in the family or the extended family or the neighborhood. My mother took me into the pediatrician, a tall man with a lantern jaw and kind hands, a doctor with a name like a suit size for a wheel, hub long. My mom did not tell him what she thought in truth, that I was possessed. It was just these strange looks on my face. He held me and conversed with me, chatting as one does with a baby. And my mother said, "She's doing it now. Look, she's doing it now." And the doctor said, "What your daughter has is called a sense of humor." "Oh," she said, and took me back to that house where that sense would be tested and found to be incurable. I like to start with my apologies to those who have heard that poem before. I carry it with me to have there be promise of not all misery and suffering while I'm standing up here. So I'm really having this home week feeling about tonight. I've had such a wonderful class, and I've had such a wonderful time with you. And so I'm going to read a few poems I've read before, some that I've never read. When our firstborn slept in, breasts hardening with milk. Oh, I'm going to start over. I have to rewrite that. Okay. When our firstborn slept in, my breasts hardening with milk, little seeps leaking into the folded husband hankies set into the front curves of the nursing harness. I would wander around the quiet apartment when her nap would last a little longer than usual. When she was awake, I was purpose. I was a soft domestic prowling of goodness. Only when she slept was I free to think the thoughts of one in bondage. I had wanted to be someone, not just someone's mom, but someone. Yet I knew that this work that I did with her lay at the heart of what happened, lay at the heart of what mattered to me, was that heart. And still there was a part of me left out by it, as if exposed on a mountain by mothering. And when she slept in, I smelled the husks of olive rind on the slope. I heard the blue knock of the eucalyptus locket. I felt the red gold translucent ants walk me like the water under Jesus' feet. I tasted the breath of the wolf seeking what would savor and enrich her milk. I saw the bending of the cedar under the sea of the wind. While she slept, it was as if my pierced ankles loosed themselves, and I walked like a hunter in the horror joy of the unattached. Girl of a mother, mother of a girl. I paced the rooms leaking cream and honey, listening, almost part fearing sometimes that she might have stopped breathing, not wanting her awake yet, but knowing nothing was anything next to the small movements she would make as she woke, as the earth moved, light on the face of the water of creation, and then that faint cry, like a pelagic bird who sleeps in flight, and I would turn, pivot on a spice-crushing heel, and start to sing as I approached her door, and I am still singing. And then I found a poem that I think I wrote, Miles, when we were in that workshop together in Key West. So I wanted to read this. It's called Everything. Most of us are never conceived. Many of us are never born. We live in a private ocean for hours, weeks, with our extra or missing limbs, or holding our poor second head growing from our chest in our arms. And many of us, sea fruit on its stem, dreaming kelp and whelk, are culled in our early months. And some who are born live only for minutes, others for 2 or for 3 summers or 4. And when they go, everything goes, the earth, the firmament, and love stays where nothing is and seeks. Isn't the same. It isn't the same now. When I used to see the motion on TV contained a quiver, and the magic horizontalness of a breast, of 2 together, like a pair of lovers who have turned into each other. I should say this is inspired by the Golden Globes, not by those special channels. I just don't know if that makes a difference, but I think I'm going to call this Golden Globes. It isn't the same now. When I used to see the motion on TV contained a quiver and the magic horizontalness of a breast, of 2 together, like a pair of lovers who have turned into each other, I'd worship women in general, my mother in holy mammary, and myself in imaginary particular, tit-willow, tit-woo. And now I see them, and something in me stops before I fall to my knees. Maybe they're sacred manna, suspended in D or C bowls or cups, and maybe they're plastic, all you can drink of downstream industrial silly putty, and I lose my ardor. I fall out of love with the appearance of plenteous beauty, and fall in fresh respect with my own milked, scrawn chest, the aged city pigeons in my shirt where once cooed mortal turtle doves. When I see on the screen the big ones now, they look like technical equipment, tools in tool belts, as if now only the small ones are surely real, only the small ones still, without an instant's thought, immediately move me. I want to read 2 poems that I worked on in Vermont that Bobby and Galway helped me with. So my home week feeling extends to these. So this is for the home as it has been, and the home in its making and refreshing. On reading a newspaper for the second time. By evening, I am down to the last, almost weightless, mineral-odored pages of the morning paper. And as I am letting fall what I have read and creasing what's left lengthwise, the crackly rustle and the feathery grease remind me that what I am doing is what my husband did, that sitting waltz with the paper, undressing its layers, blousing it, opening and closing its delicate bellows, folding till only a single column is untaken in, a bone of print then gnawed from the top down, until the layers of the paper wasp nest lay around him by the couch in a grayish speckled dishevel. I left him to it. The closest I wanted to get to the news was to start to sleep with him slowly while he was reading, the clouds of printed words gradually becoming bed sheets around us. When he left me, I thought, if only I had read the paper and vowed in 4 years I will have the Times delivered. So here I am, leaning back on the couch in the smell of inks, oil, its molecules like little ammonites suspended in shale, lead's dust silvering me. I have a finger now in the pie. Count me as a reader of the earth's gossip. I weep to feel how I love to be like my guy. I taste what he tastes each morning without moving my lips.